Good evening, everybody, and gents, thank you everyone who has joined us this evening. I hope everyone can hear me. I think the vast majority of you, if not all of you, should be on mute. But if you could keep yourselves on for the meeting, that would be great. So, as a brief introduction, my name is Matt Tennant and I am the chair of the trustee board, and I'm going to be taking you through the meeting this evening. I hope you can see on the screen in front of you all the other lovely trustees who will be presenting different segments of it this evening. So, trustees, if I can all give a nice little wave, that'd be lovely. Everybody wave. Right, fantastic. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen now. So fingers crossed this works with you all. So trustees, can I get a nod that you can see the screen all right? Fantastic. Okay then, well, welcome everyone to Outdoor Lads' first March members meeting. This is the first time that we've tried to run something like this outside of the AGM. So hopefully you will all find it useful. We didn't plan the meeting this evening based on Boris Johnson's announcements last Monday. After the AGM and towards the end of last year, we said how it'd actually be quite nice 6 months on from the AGM to give people an update on how Outdoor Lads is doing, how we're progressing given the current circumstances. So we put the event live earlier on in January, only to then discover that Boris Johnson's announcements on the future of the lockdown restriction will be happening last week. So all very well timed. So it's important to note though that this isn't another AGM. So there's going to be no voting for trustees, no voting for accounts, no trustee elections. So it's not an AGM. So we're hoping that it will be hopefully a bit more interactive, a chance for people to ask some more questions. And also we're hoping to be done by 9 o'clock at the latest this evening for you, to be able to get on and enjoy the rest of your evenings and have dinner, etc. So, what do we hope to get out of this evening, and what do we hope for you all to take away once we're done at 9 o'clock? 3 main things for this evening. Firstly, to give you an update on how Outdoor Lads is doing and the challenges that we face and will continue to face even with the announcement from Boris on Monday. Secondly, we're going to talk through what the next 6 months are going to look like. Obviously, you've all seen the announcement of the different stages and the different ways that restrictions are being lifted in England. And we're going to talk you through what this means for ODL and how our activities are going to be relaunched accordingly. And then lastly, how you can help. ODL is a members organisation, and our leaders and our members are at the core of pretty much everything we do. And if we're going to get ODL back off the ground from next month into the summer, then we need your help. And hopefully throughout the presentation this evening, there'll be some ways for you to help the charity between now and the summer. So hopefully those are the 3 things that we'll be covering tonight to get through. So, what's on the agenda for this evening then? So as I mentioned, we're going to cover what's been happening from the AGM until now. We're then going to talk about the challenges that we're facing. I'm going to hand over to Ted at that point, who will talk us through the finances and how we're doing money-wise. We'll then look forward to the next 6 months. So Simon Hawthorne is going to talk us through what the government announcement last week means for ODL and how we think our activity is going to fit into that tiered system. And then Danny Ballantyne is going to talk us through how we're actually going to get our events back off the ground. Danny McEwen-Henshaw is going to talk through the big events and what that means for us. There are still quite a lot of unknowns, but we'll talk through what we know at this exact moment of time. And then Dan Barker is going to talk us through membership and what that means. Towards the end of the presentation, Gavin's going to give us a quick update on the Stay in More event, so how we've done so far, and then what the future of Stay in More events is going to look like, and hopefully to inspire some people to come up and put some ideas together. And then Neil's going to talk through how leaders and members can help get our event programme back off the ground. So that's just a quick overview of the agenda and what we're covering this evening. Okay, so A bit of meeting format for tonight then. So there's a few ways you can ask questions and get involved in proceeding this evening. So if you navigate to the bottom of your screen, I actually can't see this because when you're showing a presentation, you can't see any of the Zoom functionality. So I'm going to assume it's all there. Questions can be answered in the Q&A function, which should be hopefully somewhere at the bottom of your screen. So throughout the meeting, you can ask questions. And there should be some members of the team who will be able to answer the questions virtually. If we can't answer your question, we'll make sure that we publish it in some action points after the meeting itself. One of the things that we would really like to encourage tonight is people to actually ask verbal questions. So if you are brave enough and you'd actually kind of like to ask a verbal question, Simon will hand you the virtual talking stick and you can answer your question to everybody. Anything that we can't answer, we'll publish afterwards. So as I said, we're not taking notes, there's no minutes, it's not as formal as the AGM, but if there's any questions that we can't answer, we will put that up afterwards. And just to let you know, the meeting is being recorded. So I don't believe you as participants are being recorded, us as the panel are, but of course, if you do want to ask any questions verbally, just to be aware, the meeting is going to be recorded for those who want to watch or can't make this evening. So I think that is everything housekeeping for tonight then. So let's move on then to the first section, which is where are we from the AGM 6 months, which I can't believe the AGM was 6 months away. So where are we at this point here? So since September, we have run a staggering 284 Stay In More events, which is remarkable, given the fact that these are all member-led events that have been run by a number of our wonderful leaders. From that period, we've had our weekly quizzes, we've had the virtual lunch breaks that have been fantastic, we've had talks, we've had chess nights, we've had games nights, and we've also had a quite brilliant Christmas programme that was organised by James, Gavin, the comms team, and a number of individuals who really stepped up and put together a really wonderful programme of events. So a big thank you to everyone who was involved in putting those things together. After the AGM and going into the autumn, the changing tier system made running events for ODL extremely different. What can only be described as a constantly changing landscape threw up a number of challenges for trying to understand the different rules that were being changing on what felt like a weekly basis, trying to understand if a member from tier 4 could travel into another area through a tier system. It really was quite a nightmare. I think there was an example of Christmas time where Liam, our office manager, had spent the whole morning updating all of the event pages for there to be a massive government announcement, and they all had to be changed the next day. So running these events was a particular challenge given the tiered system and the constantly changing environment that we found ourselves in. And then, as I'm sure you're aware from the somewhat infamous Boris Johnson announcement on Boxing Day before the Strictly Come Dancing results, that from, especially in the UK or definitely in England, from Boxing Day, the restrictions then came into force that from that moment through till now, our programme was suspended. So our day events, everything that we had planned in the diary was currently suspended, and that remains the case up until now. From lockdown part 3, as we're calling it, as ODL essentially ground to a halt and our events programme was completely frozen, we moved our staff onto almost entirely the furlough scheme. So members of our staff at that point had been on the furlough scheme in different extents, but as ODL essentially went on ice, we moved the staff onto the furlough scheme. So our central administration being kept at a really very low level at our point. And I think on behalf of the board and the members, I do want to give our thanks to the staff for dealing with this quite difficult situation and almost a constantly changing landscape, who are still keeping things going behind the scenes in the ODL office. So a big thank you from me, the members and the board to them. And then lastly, some news in terms of the trustee board. just around Christmas time, Jimmy Brash, who I'm sure many of you have seen from the big events where Jimmy's helped out quite a lot, Jimmy stood down as the trustee for staff in December. Jimmy, like all individuals who works in the healthcare and especially the hospice sector at the moment, find that the time constraints become increasingly challenging, and Jimmy was very open and honest about that. So he left the board at Christmas, and again, I'd like to extend my thanks and best wishes to Jimmy for all of his huge hard work that he put in, and we hope to see him on a big event sometime soon. So that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour through where ODL has been through from September to March, and I guess some of the kind of the core challenges that we faced. So on to the current challenges, and I'm going to swiftly hand us over to Ted in a second, just to talk through how we are doing money-wise and what the current climate looks like for ODL. But before we do that, I just want to say, firstly, this. It'll become quite clear in the next couple of slides, actually, how important ODL's membership is to the organisation and the charity, especially to a time where we haven't been able to run events. So from next March, or in a couple of weeks' time, it will mark really kind of 12 months that ODL has kind of really been able to run its bread and butter camping, hostel, big events programme. So our ability to generate revenue through paid events has been restricted, and therefore huge amounts of how ODL has been kept going these last 12 months is because of our members. And I just want to really kick off tonight by saying a huge thank you to the members who have stuck with ODL these last 12 months. The fact that we've got a wonderful membership base that has kept going with us over this last 12 months. Those who have kept renewing their membership have meant that we are still here. And I think that is an enormously important thing that I'd like to say thank you to everybody who has kept with us. We know that there are members who have cancelled their direct debits for a whole host of reasons. They've realised that we're not running events, that their personal finances are changing, that they might decide that ODL is not for them given lockdown. For those who have stuck with us, the reason that you've done so is why we're here today, and why the charity has still, that we can still go for the next couple of months. So a big thank you to everyone who stuck with us. It has made the world of difference, and we look forward to seeing you on an event at some point later on this year. So on that note then, and that somewhat whistle-stop tour through how some of the last 6 months have been, if it's okay, I'm going to hand over to Ted, our treasurer, who's going to take us through some of the finance segments. So like every good coronavirus update, I'm going to be looking after the slides. So there'll probably be some awkward moments where we have to move the slides on. So Simon, if you could hand the virtual talking stick over to Ted, and we'll kick off with the finances.
Thank you very much. Do I have to say next slide, please? Ta-da! It's not going to be great news, but it could be worse, I suppose, is how I'm going to sum this up. Can I have the next slide? I've only really got a couple. And what I'd like to do is talk a bit about what it costs to run ODL, and rather than doing lots of graphs and pie charts, just talk about what it costs to run and where we get our money from. You can put the whole slide up, I think. So if you strip out events-based activities, which obviously we haven't had so much of this year, it costs about 120k to run ODL for the year. That's staff costs, pick up the biggest chunk of that, 66,000, website and IT. Obviously that's quite important because that's how we'll book onto things. That's another 30,000. And then the rest is things like, insurance, finance, accountants, rent for the unit, rent for the office, that sort of thing. Now, if you split out where the funding comes from, now this is where Matt's point about membership staying and renewing, and I did projections at the start of the year, and I think I mentioned this at the AGM, where we were projecting enormous losses. But people have been renewing their direct debits, their membership, And so we get about £60,000 a year in membership fees. And this year we've still had 30,000 in events income. We've got another 23,000 through using the furlough scheme, and then donations of £4,000. That's donations from individual members. Some people giving quite large amounts, surprisingly, and some people giving £5, £10 here and there. And it's all meant that on a cash basis, and I stressed cash basis because our financial year ends the end of March, and when you get the numbers in the AGM in September, it will be a big loss. But on a cash basis, we've stayed pretty level. You can see that we make just about the £120,000 costs. We make that. If you add the membership events, furlough income, donations, we get to about that. And so our bank balance has remained about the same. For the year, it will be a loss because we will have things like depreciation, accruals and prepayments where you move the money so it matches. So if I paid my membership now, the money will go into the bank, but it will actually spread out over the rest of the year in an accounting term. But generally if we go bust when we run out of money, but our money has stayed about the same, although we will make another loss the year. Can we just go on to the next slide, please? I've only got two. And you can put the whole thing up. We've got some liabilities in there in that we've received a large chunk of money. I saw somebody asked a question about Big Spring Camp, and that's certainly one of them. But we've received a lot of money from people who signed up to events, but those events have not yet taken place. So if you take, we've got about £95,000 in the bank. We've got £46,000 of that is from things that we have yet to deliver on. We know that going forward we need to manage our costs, and we will continue to use the job retention scheme for as much as we need to, and we're going to reduce our web development costs to a minimum. It means it won't get some of the improvements we might like, but I think we need to keep our spending down to basically to as little as possible and focus on delivering the events. If the website doesn't improve, it'll give us something to moan about, because we all like moaning about it. If you're not involved in IT, you like, which I'm not, you also like moaning about it, don't you? For those of you at the AGM in September, I mentioned that we were going through a VAT reclaim appeal with HMRC, which could lead to getting back 20% of our membership fees because we would be counted as a sports society. That is still ongoing. It's taking, I think, we're nearly a year into the process now. I've been speaking to the accountants, and basically what they say is that HMRC is ground to a halt essentially around essential activities. So there are a lot of people doing furlough and COVID related things. So our VAT reclaim has not been dismissed, but it also hasn't been decided. So that's going to take a little while. Longer term future, well, that depends on, as you can see, that our membership income contributes about £60,000 of our running costs, but that's about half, and so the rest of our income does rely on running events. It requires people like me to drink a lot of gin at the bar at Big Spring Camp. Not that there's any gin drinkers on the board at all, I'm sure. And so it requires to make a surplus from people on the pay as you go, things like that. So we can't limp along for long without running events at our current rate, but hopefully that will start to lift. We're very conscious about managing our costs in that time. So probably, I don't think there's any questions. I've got one more thing to say, which is unfortunately, not unfortunately, it's not. I have decided to step down as treasurer. When I first looked at standing for treasurer, I thought there was maybe something about the Defence Against the Dark Arts teacher post about it, because nobody seemed to last terribly long. And I was fairly determined to do my 3 years, of which I'd done half of that. But shortly after I signed, I was appointed as treasurer, my boss told me I needed to do an MBA, and that's taken up a huge chunk of my time. And then there was a restructure at work, and I've got more responsibility. So I would like to say sorry for going out halfway through a commitment, but I think I've been stretched about as thin as I can be. But happy to, well, hopefully I will come back around after my BA is finished in the year and be able to contribute to ODL in some way. I'd like to say I'm leaving because of some dramatic rift on the board. Maybe, you know, the frisson between me and Steve Allen is too much, and unrequited love. I just can't, you know, I just can't go on any longer. But no, it is just simply that life has become a bit too busy for me, and I'm sorry to go out early halfway through a commitment. But if anyone is interested in the ODL treasurer role, then I'd be happy to speak to people about what that involves. Thank you very much. That is just my 2 slides.
Great, thank you, Ted. I think just on your point, because I think we probably will pause if anyone's got any questions, and I'll probably look to Simon and the others if there have been any questions that wants to be raised. Just to say an enormous thank you to Ted for his work since joining the board back in 2019 in steering the ODL ship through some very difficult and challenging conversations that we've had to have, and some decisions that have had to be made, not only in our financial projections looking forward, but also making sure that we are very, very closely managing our costs. And I think the fact that ODL is in the position that we're in now is testimony to Ted's stewardship in that area. So I know we can't see people, but you know, a virtual round of applause for his work, because I think the reason that we're still here today is largely down to the work that you put in. So thank you so much. I'm going to take questions then. So Simon, have we had any questions from the floor?
We have indeed. We've got one here from Andrew Watson, which I think Liam wants to answer directly. But so Andrew's asked about whether or not we can do renewal notices for memberships, so that when your membership is coming up for renewal, you can get an automatic notice to remind you, because as Andrew rightly points out, sometimes people miss out on these things. So Liam, would you like to take that one?
Thanks, Simon. I actually didn't want to answer it live. I just pressed the wrong button.
Well, you've got it now. So.
I'm on the spot now. So I assume that is a fixed-term membership that you buy on the website. That is something which I think we can have a chat about with Simon, perhaps, because I know that does happen for concession members. We will look into that one, absolutely. Just to point out as well, though, if renewing on time is something that you'd like, we do offer the direct debit scheme as well, where it would obviously come out automatically. And if it's your first time with a direct debit from Outdoor Lads, then you do get 20% off and a free T-shirt. Just to let you know. Thank you.
Thanks, Liam.
There we go. Lovely. And we've had one other one about engaging with people. I'm not sure whether that's supposed to be a question or not. It looks more like a conversation point from me in there, but it does look like a lovely little thing. Don't think we have any hands up at the moment. So yes, carry on.
Right. Okay. Well, I think if that's everything question related for Ted, I think that will be it with our finances. We said right at the beginning of the slide, one of the things that we want to nick throughout this whole presentation is how you can help us. And I think with the money thing, there is a few things that people can get involved. One, as Ted said, we will have a treasurer vacancy advertised on our website very shortly. And if it's something which you think you or another ODL member might be able to contribute and help to, the details will be published on that up online. It's also worth knowing that we have lots of members who work in lots of different sectors, and we try to keep our ear to the ground in terms of pots and money or grants or bids. But if you within your professional lives or personal lives go, oh, I know that there is a pot of money for small enterprises or organizations which you think ODL could apply to, tell us. That is the simplest thing for it, which is if you think there is something that we can have or that we can go for that we might not be aware of, do just email in support@Outdoor Lads to say, guys, just to make you aware, there's a consortium of businesses in London that are making X amount of money available for small charities. I think ODL might be suitable for this, and we'll have a look at it. So if there's anything that you come across in either, like I said, your professional or personal lives, just drop us an email. We won't be asking you to write any bids or grants, though that would also be nice if anyone could. But if you just do know of anything, do just send it our way. Okay, thanks, Ted, for that update then. So I think we will now move on probably to the more substantive bit of the meeting, and I think probably what everyone is here to find out about, which is what are the next 6 months looking like for Outdoor Lads, given the government announcement. So, back at the start of this year, slightly before the government announcement, but on the premise that there would be some form of announcement on the future of the lockdown restrictions being lifted, the trustee board put our cards on the table and identified what are the 3 organisational priorities for getting back to Get Out More. Our resource pool as a charity, both from money, from staff time, from volunteer time, is limited this year. So we're going to have to be very clear in terms of what the priorities of ODL are going to be. So we set out our priorities in 3 main areas. So the first objective being relaunching our events program, because as Ted said, that is fundamental to ensuring that we can get our financial stability for this year and the future redone. So that is primary, which is get our events program off the ground again at some point in 2021. Second objective around relaunching a form of big event at some point this year. The impact of not running Spring Camp, has taken a dent of our money, and the aim of big events is to generate income. So that is our second objective there. And the third one, as we just talked about in the previous slide, is growing and re-engaging our membership, because as Ted said, how critical they are to ODL keep going. So those are essentially our 3 big objectives for 2021. Relaunch event program, relaunch big events, grow and re-engage our membership. So those essentially are what ODL's big priorities will be for the remainder of this year. So then, let's talk about priority number 1, which is getting back to Get Out More and relaunching our event program. So I'm going to very shortly hand over to Simon, who's going to talk us through the government announcements and what that means for ODL, and then we'll hand over to Danny to talk about how ODL is actually going to get to that point there. So, Simon, I think this is when I hand over the virtual talking stick to you to take us through the next couple of slides.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. A health warning, obviously, everything in here is indicative because the government are the government. What I'm about to talk about is, I'm sorry to say, quite England-centric. The main reason behind that is simply because in Wales, we don't quite know what they're going to be doing yet. There's a Welsh review on the 12th of March, I think. If I'm wrong, someone will tell me. And Scotland, it looks like potentially sort of towards the end of April. So whilst this will be mostly England-focused, I do know that we'll be keeping a very close eye on Wales and Scotland as well. So if we can go to the next slide, please, Matt. So yes, step 1. As you know, there's some changes happening next week, week today. which don't really impact on ODL, but it's just a nice thing to know. People going back to school and weddings and funerals and so forth can resume. The big thing for us is the 29th of March. This is a date which shouldn't change, but it's what brings in the end of the stay-at-home rule, and it brings in the stay local rule. Stay local hasn't actually been sort of talked about yet. Talking to various people, it tends to be you need to be able to get from home and back to home again within the same day. I would recommend staying regionally, because, to be honest, if you go much further than that, there's always the chance that you might run into the women from Leicestershire going to Derbyshire and getting arrested with a cup of coffee rule. But the big thing for us is it means that we can bring on micro events once again. Woohoo! You may all remember that we did those last year. Leader and 5, and so we're hoping to be able to start launching some walks and cycles from that point. We do also bring in the whole exemption thing. Last year, we got an exemption from the Department for Culture, Media and Sport via the BMC and Sport England. That hasn't been confirmed yet, so that might come in and allow us to do more than 6. But as it stands, it looks like we will be able to do 6 people micro events from the 29th, but we'll obviously keep you updated on whether or not those can be flexed or increased.
Simon, just before we move on, just to reiterate, because it's quite important, because people saying, well, why was it before Christmas ODL did events up to 20 people? Yes. And we're now saying it's 6. It's because last time we had this exemption because of our affiliation with the BMC and through Sports England, that we could go up to 30 people as a participation. And just to confirm, that hasn't, as of yet, that's not been announced, has it?
No, it's not been announced yet. DCMS are looking at it, but talking to Sport England earlier on today, nothing has yet been confirmed, and they are reticent to say whether or not it will come in yet because of the various bits around the whole programme that the government put forward on the 22nd.
Great, thank you, Simon. Okay, right, should we move on to the next?
Please, yes. So after step 1, we come to, funnily enough, step 2. Again, the date of the 12th is indicative. It could move to the right depending on what happens. I'm not going to go into the hows and wherefores, but the second step will be at least 5 weeks after the first step. And because of the way these dates work, the first step officially is on the 8th, despite the fact it comes in 2 parts. But hey, I didn't design this. Good news for anyone who's been thirsting. Pub gardens reopen. There'll be some guidance around how we can handle that as part of micro events and so forth. Probably very similar to what we did last year. Again, we just need to clarify a few bits and pieces, but you will get advice ahead of anything happening here. What is interesting for us is that there are very few other changes. So the micro events will continue. Probably walking, cycling, and maybe some things like canoeing or kayaking, if those can be arranged elsewhere as well. Again, there are other local restrictions that might apply to that. But the interesting thing for Outdoor Lads is what they call the government research into large events. So it's the Events Research Programme. If you're particularly interested, they are going to issue pilot licenses to a number of events to look at different ways in which they can manage big numbers. So, we're talking that, 1,000 people kind of things. And that will cover everything from testing through to vaccine passports and various other things. Obviously, we are not going to be part of that. We're far too small and there are too many other issues involved with it. But we'll obviously be keeping a very close eye on it because the outcome for that could dictate as and when we can start bringing back larger events.
Great. Thank you, Simon.
Step 3, please. Yes. And so, like day follows night, we move on to step 3. This again, date 17th May could move to the right. It could get later. So this is the earliest date it might happen. The nice thing about this is that we can go up to 30 people outdoors again, irrespective of what happens with exemptions and so forth. We'll be able to get back up to 30 people for outdoor events. We'll be able to start returning to some indoor participation events as well, such as indoor climbing. And we can start doing camping events from that point onwards as well. So the sort of step 3 will be the sort of the relaunch of what Neil termed last year as our Back with a Bang. Those are going to be, let's start hammering out events and really start spreading things around. Now, obviously, there will be some people who are still a little bit nervous about that, and we'll be continuing to run micro events well into the summer as well. So you don't need to suddenly think, oh my goodness, I'm concerned about running into people, because I don't know about anyone else. I'm afraid of people now. I've become very sort of hermit-like. And I think seeing more than 6 people at once would probably make my mind explode. So it will be a sort of a bit of a soft launch for that, and those things will continue. But for Outdoor Lads, the big point is that camping events will be able to begin from step 3. And let's hope for a really lovely summer, because I think that's what we all need. And Matt, step 4, please.
And before we move on, it's also worth saying that this is also the milestone for indoor participation events as well. So, can you say anything more about that, Simon?
Yes. So prior to step 3, there will be some indoor activities that people can do individually. So you can go back to your gym, you can go swimming, all those kind of things. But for participation and sporting events, again, unless DCMS tell us otherwise, they cannot do those as group activities prior to step 3. As I said, that might flex, but the current program says that it won't do. So from the 17th, that'll be things like going back to weekly climbing events and other indoor activities that you may or may not have done before.
Okay. Simon, there's a question that we've had, and I think
fabulous. Let's have a little look at the question. How will you ensure a fair distribution of attendance on micro events, particularly for those who may have struggled alone through lockdown? It's not just all spaces taken by the same people. That's a really good question, actually, David. And there are a number of things that we're going to do. Primarily, my big thing is we're going to be asking leaders to lead events. The more events we can put on, the greater the distribution, and more likely you can get onto different things. In terms of how we can fairly do that, we will probably institute a number of different rules that we did before, such as only 1 event a week or so forth. We still need to work through some of those points. Everything you said there has already been started to be discussed, and we're working on some guidance which we will then be sort of putting out. But the primarily our big thing is, once these things start, we would really like leaders to put on as many micro events as we can, because I fully appreciate a lot of people may have been alone through lockdown, they may have really struggled, and actually this could be an absolute lifeline to people as we start coming out of this extended period of lockdown. So I guess the answer I can give you is we're still working on some of it, but our biggest point on how we deal with that is simply getting more micro events put on. And indeed, because we are still asking people to stay sort of regionally, locally, hopefully that means we won't have people traveling 200 miles to go on an event that you could have gone on. So I suppose part of it will be asking members to sort of think twice about what they're booking onto, and think be logical and, I suppose, fair.
Great, thank you, Simon. Shall we move on to step 4?
Please, yes. So step 4, here we go. This is the date that all the newspapers have been talking about, 21st of June. We can but hope, but again, that might well move into July or even into August. It depends on what happens with caseloads and the vaccine rollout and all those wonderful things that the government is supposed to be doing. But the main point about step 4 is that it is the end of social restrictions. Apologies, and the outcome of the research into large events. So we hope to at least see ahead of step 4 the outcome into those large events, but it will be announced by step 4. So that will be things where you can have more than 60 people indoors and more than 100 outdoors. There's again some flex in those numbers, but the thing they're looking at is, can we have 1,000 people indoors and 4,000 people outdoors? Well, that's more than we have in Outdoor Lads, so we should be fine within those. But we still have to wait for that to be announced. The hope is that from step 4 onwards, we can start doing hostels again. We can get back to pretty much everything we did before. And so, as I'm sure Danny will cover it in a short while, one of our big things we want to do is press ahead with an autumn hostel program and start booking in Christmas events as well. I mean, and I know it's March, and mentioning the word Christmas makes me feel slightly unwell. But that is something that we can certainly start looking forward to. And again, as I say, the social restrictions thing is lifted, so we can start doing socials again. We can start doing all those events that we haven't been able to do for the last year.
Great, thank you, Simon. So what I'll do is I'll move us on, if that's okay, just to the summary slide.
Yes.
And then if anyone's got any questions, we can kind of clump them together and go through them then.
Yes, indeed. I mean, I can already see one question in there, but yes. So here's your lovely rainbow slide of when things start. As you can see, walking and cycling, we hope to be able to kick those off from the 29th of March, pending something happening in the meantime. That's pretty much our milestone date. Everything after that, the dates could shift. So that's why it says step 2, 3, and 4. I have no doubt that the press will keep us well informed on that, but also we will keep our website updated in the COVID information page as well. But as you can see, walking and cycling, climbing means indoor climbing. There's potential for outdoor climbing from the 12th of April, but we still need to speak with our climbing leaders to figure out how that works because of the numbers of people. And again, camping, that's our sort of big ticket item, hoping to get that kicked off by mid-May with step 3, and then hostels and big events will follow in midsummer.
Okay. Great. Okay.
So, do we have any questions on that? Is the oh, there's no open questions. So that's nice. Is anyone feeling brave enough to put their hand up? Good. This is what I like. No. Oh no. I say that Richard Cully's put his hand up. So Richard, I'm going to allow you to talk. So make sure you have your microphone turned on. And hello, Richard.
Richard, I don't think we can hear you.
Hello?
Ah, hello there. Welcome.
Sorry, I was pressing the mute button on the control, not in the Zoom screen. It's just a repeat of the question that I've asked in the Q&A.
Ah, right. I missed it. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't know what stay local means because in terms of distance to a micro event, because, you know, the government are confusing about everything. And to me, staying local means very local, like within a 5-mile radius. But even before the pandemic, when I was starting to look at going to events as a new member and joining, stuff was at least 30 or 40 miles away, and I'm in central England. So, I mean, it's unfeasible for me or anyone to expect a micro event on their doorstep. Or within a 5-mile radius or
yes,
whatever.
Absolutely. So as you say, the government have not defined what local means. So the broadest brush explanation we can find out of any of the government departments is you need to be able to get home again on the same day. Now, I live down in London. I work for Transport for London, and most of my travel is done by buses, trains, tubes, and so forth. So for me, local is I can get there in half an hour on the bus. But for my mum, who lives in Hereford, half an hour in the car is local. So there will obviously be some things. I would say stick within your region if you can. If you're on the border, then, you know, but the primary thing is you need to be able to get there and back again in the same day and in a safe way. So if you're taking a train, for example, you might need to plan that in because if you need to take a mask, you might need to plan your changes and so forth. If it's an hour and a half, you know, there is a certain amount of personal responsibility there in choosing that. But I mean, one of the things we would ask is that people don't go traveling enormous distances to go on a walk. So if you're in you said somewhere in the Midlands, so Birmingham.
Yeah, I'm in South Warwickshire.
Warwickshire, there you go. So
you know,
no,
central.
I did a micro event in Atherstone last year, which is a 2-hour journey for me. The only reason I did it was because it was an assessment. I wouldn't have travelled that far otherwise. So I think there's a little bit of personal decision on that. But one of the things we would ask is that people do try to sort of stay within sort of the spirit of the idea of local. I mean, if your nearest event is 30 miles away, that is your local event. But if your nearest event is 5 miles away, that is your local event. So I think there needs to be a little bit of pragmatism here and just sort of look at it from that point of view. Does that help?
Yeah, I appreciate the answer. Yeah, I know it's difficult because the government haven't been clear about anything. I don't think.
I mean, for about 11 years, but you know.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's difficult to kind of crawl out, back into submerge back into daylight and go, we're going to have an event, but no one's can come outside of a 50-mile radius or something, because that's what the government have said, but they haven't said that.
No, so they've not put distances on it, and unless they do, our point will be that you need to be able to go on these micro events. That'll be fantastic for all of us, but is sort of try and filter them by distance, so that you have the least amount of distance to travel. If nothing else, just for your own protection, in case my former colleagues in the police decide to say, right, why have you travelled this far? You have the excuse, obviously, of coming on the event, but it is always best to try and stay closer if you can. And like I say, the big thing is you need to be able to get there and back again in the same day. There's no overnight stops allowed at the moment.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Is there anybody else?
I'm going to. We've had one in the chat box, I think, and then I think we'll probably have to.
Lovely.
Segment. So we've had a question from a member, which is around. Obviously, we've got pre-booked hostels and things in the diary from now until the summer point, and I was wondering, Liam, would I be all right to hand over to you just in terms of when people who are booked onto hostels and things for this summer, essentially from now until the 21st of June, when they could expect to be told?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. It's very difficult to give you an exact time frame for how much in advance we'll be able to let you know. Obviously, those events that take place at the moment before June the 21st will have to be moved, I'm afraid. But as earlier, we've got limited staff resources, and there's lots of factors at play there, such as our friends at the YHA and moving hostels to new dates, etc. So we're doing what we can to let people know about those events. There will be updates coming out later this week following this meeting about those and about Big Spring Camp, etc. later as well. So it's kind of we know, please bear with us. There's lots of things that we need to try and juggle at the moment. Thank you.
That's fine.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Super. Okay, well, I'm going to close this segment off then, if that's all right. So a big thank you to Simon for taking us through the various government steps and for all the questions that we've had. So thank you, Simon.
No, thank you.
We'll probably get this slide up online somewhere on the website, so members can just get a recap and a refresh. But that is our aspiration. So let's move on then, and Dan, I'm going to hand over to Danny Ballantyne, who's going to talk us through essentially what are some of the steps that ODL need to do from now going into these different tiers for us to kind of be able to get our events back up. Before we do that, though, I think that there's two things there's two principles that it's important that when we're thinking about the return to the events and when we are planning between now and really the summer, two things that we are going to keep in the back of our mind at all time. Firstly is around the safety of our members and our leaders, and that will be in paramount in everything that we do. We will not be trying to do things that push the boundaries of what we are allowed to do, because these boundaries are in place to keep people safe. There may be some people who argue that we shouldn't do any events at all given this period, but we have to find a balance between the welfare of people being allowed to go outdoors and what we can do safely. So the safety of our leaders and members is our number one priority when we're thinking about this going forward. And then secondly, we will do what we're allowed to do in the confines of the legislation. And I think that is important, is that it will be very easy to say, oh, ODL, just go and book a campsite of 60 people in April, do it over 3 different plots. We are a charity and we're regulated in a number of different ways, and we will do what we're allowed to do in the confines of the law. So I think two quite important principles for when we're thinking about planning and what that's going to mean for ODL. So, Simon, if you can hand the virtual talking stick over to Danny Ballantyne, and we're now going to talk through month by month what this is actually going to mean for ODL and the different steps that we've got to go through. So, Danny, if I can hand over to you, if that's all right.
Awesome, thanks, Matt. Okie dokie. So, as Matt said, the biggest priority at the moment is our leaders. So the welfare and the safety of our leaders is paramount. As a member-led organisation, without a membership, we can't do anything. So the first thing we need to do is a leaders survey to find out from our membership, are leaders happy running events? And if they have reservations, what are they and what can we do to help alleviate those? So this is going to be started in March. So in the next few weeks, you will notice probably some emails come through for some feedback. One thing that was mentioned as well at the AGM, we've had a new insurance provider for Outdoor Lads, and we still have a few stipulations that we need to cover to get everything fully in place for when we get our event program up and running again. Those are currently being undertaken by Liam and Nick. So Nick is advising the board on the changes that we need to make and why. And the third one, prepare leader briefings. So for our leaders now, obviously we've spoken quite a lot about the rules changing, how they impact us, what events we can run. We're going to prepare as much information and support as possible to our leaders to run events. You know, we don't expect to do them blindfolded, and we will hold everybody's hand every step of the way to make sure that whatever problem, issue or concern you have, we make sure that we cover them. As Simon said as well, 29th of March is the key date here. So from the 29th of March, we are going to try and run micro events. As we've said already, these dates aren't set in stone because of the government changes. But I've been talking with the regional coordinators, organisers and leaders about getting the micro events ready post 29th of March. So there is a lot of work going on in the background already to make sure these things are ready. I need to wait for the chat box to clear because it's covering my last icon. Book camping. Right, fab. As Simon said as well, camping. Camping is going to be the most likely option that we can run with for the rest of the year. Hostels and shared spaces are going to be the biggest concern. So within the guidelines and the regulations, we're going to exploit the camping options as much as we can. If you think about all the camps that make us famous, we're going to try and run as many events as possible. So if it ends up being that we run camping events for, you know, said 6 or 12 people for 3 consecutive weekends, if that's what we have to do to get camping events on, you know, to support our membership, then that's what we will do. Next slide, please. As we've said, from the 29th of March, micro events will begin. So from that point, we'll hopefully have a whole array of events ready to fly. A lot of people have asked already about the numbers on the events. This is where the answer isn't down to the board or the staff. This is down to our whole membership and our whole host of leaders. We, you know, as single leaders, you can put on as many events as you possibly can. But as a collective, if we can at least try and put on 2 or 3 events each to try and make sure that we can cater for the membership and the demand that we have. One thing that we're quite bad at sometimes is knowing when to ask for help and being very clear with what needs to happen. We are a member-led organisation. The members shape and give the direction for this organisation, and everybody is a part of that. So, you know, the concern of there's not going to be enough events, it's not the royal we here, it's actually what can each individual do to make this happen. Do people want to upskill to become a walking leader? Do current leaders want to ask for help and run multiple events, multiple walks? This is what we need to look at. Secondly, continue to book camping. You're going to notice there's a theme here. I think camping is on every slide because this is what we need to do to concentrate on for the rest of the year. Again, membership engagement. One thing that we're notoriously not brilliant at is engagement. We have now got a dedicated comms and marketing group. So within our membership, we have a host of people whose professions revolve around comms and marketing. We're using their advice and expertise to try and create a program now for engagement. So re-engagement of our current members, you guys, what do we want to put on to make it worthwhile? Re-engagement of people whose memberships have lapsed, and then potential new members. And we're going to try and shape this using our volunteer base now. And just a note as well, if there's any of these topics that interest people, in the follow-up email, express your interest and we can try and push you towards these groups to help shape where we move to. Lastly, the Back with a Bang events. Neil started these back in some point last year. It's been a very long year. So we currently have, Neil, correct me if I'm wrong, it's 100 plus Back with a Bang events ready to go. So at this point in time, 200 events, I stand corrected. So there's 200 events sat there waiting to go live for these events to be run and people to book on them. Obviously, we need to put these on in the right place in this timeline. So currently, walks for 6 people, walks for 12 people. When we can move them up, we will put them in at that appropriate point. Okay, next slide, please. May. So Back with a Bang event, when we look at, I think it's the 19th of May, if the restrictions are lifted then and we can put all of these events on, that's another 214 events, I think Neil's just said, that are going to be live on the website that you can book onto. And at that point, that starts to give you options for planning the rest of your time. Camping, again, the common theme is back. Camping events begin. This will hopefully be the start of we'll call it a project if you want, of camping that's going to run throughout the rest of the year. And we will cater these as best we can. If the restrictions allow an increase in numbers, we will do so. We'll change them accordingly. Planning for summer and autumn events. We spent a significant amount of time with the board and coordinators trying to think about what can we do to make sure that we can put on events at the drop of a hat's notice. And we're putting things in place now that if there is an opportunity, we can jump at it. We can get things ready very quickly to put on big-ish events, whatever we want to call them. We're getting together the information that we can throw them on at last minute, because there will be a demand from you guys. And if it's within the restrictions, there's an opportunity we should do them. Potential for indoor climbing. So Fergus, another trustee, is currently working with the climbing coordinators from around the UK. So the likes of Simon Dennis, Wilco, Paul Rydell, to look how viable it will be when we can return to indoor climbing. Those climbers out there, you'll acknowledge borrowing of harnesses, sharing of ropes, the sharing of spaces, and the 2 meter distances. If we're trying to cater climbing events to new people, that will be an issue. So Fergus is heading this up. So if you have any questions or queries about that, aim them at Fergus. Sorry, Fergus. And the next thing is big events. As we've already said, at the moment, how likely is it looking? We are not too sure. But if we can run a version of stripped back big events, so if you think if we can get a field and fill it full of tents and throw it at the ODL bar, and Dan can be on the DJ, Dan can be the DJ for the night, that hopefully won't take a significant amount of planning. And if we can throw these events together last minute when there is an opportunity, we will do so. And we're going to do everything we can within the restrictions to monopolise on those opportunities. Next slide, please. June to Christmas. So if we look further afield, the government advice here is, it's woolly to say the least in the first place. So this could be completely wrong. But what we've inferred so far is the potential for hostel and indoor events from midsummer onwards could be looking likely. So we do need to start planning potential hostel events. And I say potential very lightly in that terms, but this is things that will progress further down the line. Again, you'll see camping, opportunities there. Autumn hostels and Christmas programme. So again, we've had so many events that have been pushed from 2020. A lot of these events have been pushed straight into this year. But I think a few people have mentioned already, a lot of these events are already full. So you'll see, North Christmas will be moved to this year, or other events very similar, and they might have full places. But actually, this gives us opportunity. If the regulations allow, we can put on as many hostels as we need to cater to that demand. But again, this isn't the royal we. This is you guys as members and leaders. We need everybody's help pulling together with this. And as you said, the government advice on the legislation, we are following the advice. We are interpreting it safely, not creatively. And as Richard, you've said before about how close is a close event. Liam looks at the guidance and runs it past the board, and then that is updated weekly. So if you're ever unsure of a question, it is always on the website. There's a COVID section under the website for the latest regulations from that point onwards. Next slide, or I think that's me done.
I think that's it, Danny. Okay, so I think there were two questions that came up in the chat thing. One was around if leaders are aware of potential campsite options, should we start making some initial inquiries? Yes, is the answer. If you know of your mate Bob, who's got a field and a Portaloo and can get us a good deal, start making some inquiries. And I think that would be, we'll put some details of where to email it to after, but absolutely. As of tomorrow morning, if you know of people who have got some campsites and they might be allowing stuff for the summer, yeah, absolutely. We'll start making inquiries ASAP. There was another question around when can leaders start putting on micro events if they're happy to do so. All I will say is we will give you a go. There's a few little bits of event text wording that we need to sort out to make sure we're happy with it very soon. I would imagine in the next 10 days or so, we can start getting micro event pages up on the website if leaders have got ideas. Or,
and we have one more in there as well, Matt, about outdoor climbing.
Could someone, I can't.
The outdoor climbing situation at the moment, we are going to seek advice from Nick and the climbing coordinators on this, because at the moment it's the BMC's guidance is slightly different from the government, so this is underway at the moment. So we will get a reply back to you. If you approach your climbing coordinator from your area, or you will find them on the website, we'll have a proper answer to you very shortly.
Great, thank you. Okay, well, thank you for the questions, and I think thank you for Danny for taking us through the different segments there. I think a few things, obviously, a lot of work in the next month to get things ready for our leaders, and then the planning and the preparation from the early part of the spring and into the early summer then commences. So great, thank you, Danny, and thank you for all of the questions that we've had there. So the next segment of the slides, we're going to be handing over to Danny McEwen-Henshaw, who's going to give us a brief update on what's the state of play with big events, given what we know as of today. So Danny, if I can hand over to you.
Thanks a lot, Matt, and good evening, everybody. So I know probably a good deal of us that are on the event tonight are probably missing our big events program from 2020 and from what we have in 2021 so far. I know that I'm definitely missing it. I'm probably majority of the big events team are missing the absolute tiredness at the end of a spring camp and other big events, but the total satisfaction of having delivered a really good event. So rest assured, obviously, I know we've talked about it before, but what we want to do is get back to these events, but get back to them when it's safe and when it's sensible to do so. And that's basically the core of what our planning for these kind of big events will be. So next slide, please, Matt. So it probably goes without saying, but running big events, from what's been said on the slides already, is going to be a bit of a challenge for 2021 as it stands, certainly for the earlier part of it. Obviously, we've heard from Simon talking about the government-led review about larger events and gatherings and how that can be impacted with testing and so on. But obviously what we'd like to try and see once the restrictions are planned to end in June is for some little big spring camp events or similar kind of events. And if we can do so, we'd like to potentially look at some sort of a summer camp offering, as you know, as Danny B was mentioning just then, you know, basically a tent, a DJ booth and a bar in a field, you know, a stripped down version of what our spring camp used to be. Ready for something in 2022 that can be so much better, which is what we're really looking forward to. But obviously what we'd like is your help in terms of research. So in the next couple of months between now and June, as these reviews are taking place from government, you'll be getting some surveys and requests for information from us, from the big events team. And we just like your genuine and honest thoughts as to how you would feel attending these kind of large events, obviously, and what thoughts you might want to give us, which will help us build the event program to make it safe and make it fun as best as we can. So watch out for those, and obviously keep us posted with your comments and thoughts. Next slide, please, Matt. So the update so far, obviously, Spring Camp 2021, sadly, is going to be something that we are going to rearrange and push till the date in 2022. which for those who may or may not know, it will be a date in June this time, which is where the bank holiday is being shifted to next year. The end of May bank holiday is being moved. So we will confirm all of that for you once obviously the dates are confirmed with Land Roost. Obviously what we'd like to do is basically continue to rely on your support in us moving the dates in the way that we're doing. Obviously we're not doing it by choice, by our, sort of from our own perspective. We're doing it because we literally can't run the event in its current form. So we'd like your cooperation in continuing to stick with us in that respect. Next point, please, Matt. And obviously, pretty much covering what we've mentioned already about looking some middle-sized camps. So they could be sort of 100+ events. They could be 200+, obviously, depending on how things go with restrictions and reviews. The 15th birthday event, obviously, 15 years of Outdoor Lads this year, which is absolutely fantastic to see where we've come from, and such a shame to be celebrating that as such in a year that we're in as it stands. But we will be looking to do some sort of commemorative events and some camping and possibly some other types of celebration events. But as we get more information from the government as to what we can and can't do, we'll let you know as soon as we know. Halloween for this year was already probably going to be a bit of a risk from a time perspective, being such a close-knit event, but we are going to be looking for a venue for Halloween for 2022. Unfortunately, those who've been sort of stalwarts and have been to Borwick Hall in Lancaster with us for years in the past, we sadly can't go to Borwick Hall anymore, as the restrictions from Lancashire County Council have such that we can't use their catering facilities on site anymore, which basically means that the event becomes very difficult to operate. So if you know a potential good venue for a Halloween event, 100+ people, perhaps with some tented accommodation and internal accommodation, somewhere potentially very spooky and characteristic like Borwick Hall used to be, then please feel free to either drop me a message on the site or have a chat with Liam in the office. Then obviously we can try and get some plans together for a really cool Halloween 2022. The Christmas programme has been moved obviously up to 2021 to December this year, and as was mentioned earlier on, we probably will be getting that schedule of Christmas events live as soon as we can. I know it's only just about to get into spring, but we obviously want to give you all something to look forward to, because obviously Christmas is 9 months away, but still we've got good, pretty decent confidence that those events will go ahead as planned with the way the restrictions are looking, and we want you to basically have something to look forward to at the same time. So watch out for those, North Christmas, South Christmas, and potentially something for New Year as well, if we can get some plans in place. Plus, of course, the signature family Christmas event over the actual Christmas period itself will be materialising very soon. Next one, Matt. So importantly, how can you help us with these big events? So obviously, if you are a member of another organisation or see on the news or local news, national news, what another organisation or festival operation is doing, please feel free to let us know. It might be that you've been the 10th person to tell us the same news, but we always welcome inside information on perhaps what a local Pride event is doing, or what a local sort of big marathon is doing, or a half marathon or something like that. Anything like that helps us to kind of understand what other organisations are thinking. It helps us to begin our planning as well if we work in the same way. So please do keep us posted. You can message us through Facebook or Twitter, or email into the office support@outdoorlads.com to let the office and all of the rest of us know where possible. And we were talking about these little spring camp events or other smaller big events for the summer. If you know of somewhere, a field, a 60+ or 100+ campsite or campground, or someone that you can sort of work something out with, it could be a farmer's field that we can get the facilities to. That could be a possible option. So please do let us know. And when the time comes for big events to come back up into their full capacity, certainly in 2022 or maybe for the latter part of this year, we need you as volunteers to join us on the big events team. If you want to help us out in running the event, in planning it beforehand, perhaps even just giving us a helping hand loading the vans or unloading the vans at the end of the event. Every job that somebody does on a big event is a massive help to the team. So we welcome any and all volunteers who want to give us a hand in any way, shape or form. So please come forward and please help us run a future fantastic big event.
Great. Okay, thank you, Danny. I'm just having a look. Simon, have we got any questions that are unanswered that we need to cover?
No, I think that the team of admin have been answering them all in the Q&A as they have come up. So there's no new questions.
Great.
Oh,
okay.
no, I say that. Someone has literally just asked a question. So Ian Williams has asked, now that some prides are announcing dates, for example, London Pride on the 11th of September, will we plan to join the parades if they go ahead? I can cover this if you'd like, or Liam, do you want to come in on this? No, okay, he's waving frantically. So for a lot of the prides, we were pre-booked on them last year, for example. So for London Pride, for example, we'd already booked our place on it long before any lockdown came in. So our thing will carry over to that. Obviously, we would like to get people out on prides again. They can be a really great way of showing off who we are, and especially as we're sort of relaunching the organisation, I think it'd be a really lovely thing to get crowds of red T-shirts wandering up and down your local streets on your various prides. And we've had one more from an anonymous person asking about stay in more events and will they continue online. I'm not going to cover that because that comes up soon. So keep your eyes open for stay in more events. Right. And that's it, Matt.
Super. Okay. Well, I think we'll end it there on that segment then. And thank you, Danny, for taking us through. So as mentioned, we are really optimistic that our Christmas and autumn, any kind of big events we can do in that period, and we've got some plans in play, what we hope to be for the summer, but so much will be dependent on the government announcements. What I think I will say is when we do Spring Camp next year, and I absolutely hope to do it, it will be big. And I think we will be throwing as much as we can at Spring Camp for next year to potentially make it the biggest one that we've ever done. So keep that in the back of your mind. There were a few plans and a few ideas to potentially make Spring Camp bigger and better than we've ever had before. So a bit of food for thought there. All right, well, I think that takes us to the end of the big events segment then. And then that actually is our second big priority for the year. We're now going to move on to the third segment, which is a bit of an update in terms of our third priority, which is around membership engagement for the remainder of the year. So Simon, if it's all right, I'm going to hand the virtual talking stick over to Dan Barcroft, who's just going to take us through a couple of points on this segment. So Dan, if you're there, can I hand over to you, please?
Thanks, Matt. Can I have the next slide, please? I always want to say, I always feel jealous of what's his face that says that. So I just wanted to go through some of the things around membership engagement, and some of these you will have heard already throughout the meeting tonight. But I just want us to take a moment to remember who we are as an organisation. So we hear everything about what we need to survive, you know, our income, our volunteers, our leaders. And I think Danny Ballantyne said that we are ultimately a volunteer-led organisation. And, you know, we all know, and we've all got lots of stories about how the last 12 months have affected us. And anybody that's probably come out of the last 12 months and said they've had a rip-roaring time is probably not telling the truth. So it should, and everybody, whether we're a leader, whether you're a member, a trustee, whether you are just a volunteer that helps with big events, etc., you will have your own things that have gone on that have meant that, you know, volunteering is that little bit extra that's had to be squozen, and what we're asking for really is to people to, you know, these ideas that people have got, events that people want to do, we really, really do need you to put those events on, and if you have an idea, you know, take the torch and run with it and go with it, and we will provide the support. But what we can't do is just rely on the same people to do the same events year in, year out, because those people get tired, and those people have also got other things going on in their lives as well. We're not like gyms or even the National Trust, where we've got big teams that do various different things, or we're a multi-million-pound organisation. That's not who we are. And so we really, really need members, leaders to drive this forward, because if we don't all put our foot to the floor, then one day we may end up saying that this disappeared, and I wouldn't like us to have missed the opportunity to really engage and put that on. So I think that's really, really important. But we will want to, as we re-engage with the membership, we really want to, you know, Matt said he couldn't overstate it enough, and it's true. We want to say thank you to those who've continued with us and stuck by us. You've literally kept us afloat, and you've kept this organisation which keeps us connected and together going. So thank you for that. We will have various different campaigns coming up. So we'll have a campaign to get those back who've left us for whatever reason, and there's no judgment there. You know, everybody's situation over the last 12 months has been different. And, you know, I think if anything's been taught us all about being kind and patient and tolerant of that. So we will be reaching out to those that left us and asking them to come back, hoping that they find themselves in a place where they feel they do want to re-engage with us, and that'll also help us as well. And there'll also be a real refresh in terms of getting new members post lockdown, and we're looking at some offers and incentives, etc., and some use of our comms channels to really kind of do that membership drive, in the hope that when all this is over and we kind of, you know, all throw our face masks in the bin for the final time, that we'll all be kind of raring to go, and everybody will want to see people again, recognising actually what somebody said earlier on, that will take some time for other individuals based on their own kind of their own background and their own how COVID's affected them. But if you know a friend, if you've got some friends, please tell them about Outdoor Lads. We really do need those referrals, and we will be setting up this refer a friend scheme, which will have some incentives attached to it as well. So that is all in the background, and the details we are thrashing through that we discussed at a board call last week, and we're currently thrashing through those. But just to the final point is the one I started on, and that is that we really, really need you, and we really need all of you to step up and join in and help us carry on making a difference. And that's all I have to say. And I think I'm handing over to Gavin.
Great. Thanks, Dan, for running through that. And yeah, if anyone again has any suggestions, ideas, things that they've picked up on, you know, we would absolutely love to hear you. So that's great. Thank you, Dan. I don't think there's any questions in the Q&A thing on that segment. So I think if that's all right, Dan, I think you've got off without any questions. So well done on that bit. So if that's all right with everyone, I think we'll then move on, I think, to the last segment of this evening. Again, very much on the theme of things that people can get involved with and help out. Gavin, I think, is just going to give us a very sort of brief summary on Stay In More, because I know there was a question from an earlier segment on what kind of the future of Stay In More events looks like, and just a few things that you can get involved with. So Gav, if I can hand the virtual talking stick over to you just for these couple of slides.
Thank you, Matt. So 284 virtual events have happened since September, which is absolutely awesome. You get to see some examples of some of the stuff that, frankly, you know, a lockdown happened. People just really was all hands to the pumps. Predominantly leaders just started setting up Stay In More events, loads of quizzes. Peter and Mike, I have to mention them. James and his practically 7 days a week virtual lunch breaks. Huge variety of talks just emerged from nowhere, really. Paul and many others, just a whole variety of subjects, including chess, mountain rescue, beekeeping, trips to various far-flung parts of the world. Always popular, always really fill up quickly. As soon as they're published, people just jump on them. It's just been absolutely amazing, and it really does show, you know, what is the spirit of Outdoor Lads, keeping our community together, being there for each other, helping people who might otherwise feel quite lonely and disconnected, who are missing most, I guess, those walks, those actual face-to-face socials that we started off being an organization for. So why would we stop? You know, if it works, don't fix it. The future is bright, and if anything's come out of COVID that's a positive, we've learned that there is an appetite for these Stay In More events. So let's keep them coming. If people still keep booking onto quizzes, please do keep hosting them. To date, Peter and Mike, particularly more recently, the two Kevs, these rising stars of the Stay in More circuit, which has done an absolutely fantastic, dedicated job. If anyone else wants to do a quiz, then I'm sure, have a word with Peter or Mike. They'd probably like to perhaps take an evening off, or just have a look on the calendar, see if there's nothing else that's going to conflict with what you're planning. And if you're a leader, it's you know how to set up events, and it's very, very simple and straightforward. But you can ask me. I'm probably the best person to come to first, or support at Outdoor Lads. Could ask Dan and Liam, but they can always forward the email on to me. And I'll happily talk you through the process. I'll happily help you set up an event. I'll happily sort out the Zoom account as well for you. If you're not a leader, you don't have to be one. If you've got an idea, that's all you need, and I can help you make it happen. There's even a member, we went through an evening together learning how Zoom worked for him, so that he was prepared to then host his first ever event of any sort. And I'm really happy to do that. So if you've got an idea, in the spirit of Outdoor Lads, step forward. We can make it happen. People love talks, people love quizzes. Who knows what else might be out there? You just don't know until you try. So that would be my advice to you there. There's been a few professional things we've got going. I would be remiss not to plug that just today I've posted an event on the 27th of this month, MV the Queen, professional drag act, absolutely fantastic entertainer. I very much don't doubt that it will be sold out within a few days. So please do, if that's the kind of thing that you've been looking forward to for a long time, the next best thing to actually being in some bar somewhere with a drink in your hand and actually watching entertainment on stage. So yeah, the future is bright. More of it, let's keep it going. You don't need my permission, just really make sure that whatever you're planning, whenever you're planning it, isn't gonna, we're not competing with someone who's doing something similar. If you've got any questions at all, let me know. I don't need to spell out what's in good taste, but if you're not too sure, if you've got some sort of underwear party that you're thinking of hosting, maybe just run that one by me. But for the most part, a bit of common sense, and as long as it's reputationally okay. Any questions at all, email me or just ask. That's it, really.
Great, super, thank you, Gav. So yeah, absolutely. In answer to the earlier question, are the Stay in More events continuing? Yes, absolutely. But as before, we need people to get on board and start thinking of putting them on. You don't have to be a leader, and we'll make it happen for you. So I think that is probably everything. So Gav, I'm not seeing any questions.
There's some lovely comments coming in actually, Gavin, from that. People saying thank you to everyone who've run Stay in More events. There's a number of new members who are saying they've been an absolutely fantastic way of getting introduced to the organisation. And
that's huge.
A huge thanks has to go to everyone who's run any of these events. We've got the ones you mentioned. We've got gaming. We've got Gardener's Question Time. It's been an amazing thing. Wonderful.
Great.
I've done so little compared to all the leaders who've actually stepped up and organised these events. Writing a quiz takes hours and hours of effort, and some people have done that week in, week out for months. It's just fantastic. I would just one last thing actually. In talking of the future, if anyone's got any fundraising type stuff, I've had a few people approach me actually saying they're really interested in this. And as Outdoor Lads, if you can get 100 people to raise £100, that's 10 grand as an organisation we can put up towards whatever cause you think. So there's incredible potential there, I think, to grow our membership, our reputation, through stuff that's going to get us recognised for all the right reasons. So that again is potentially part of the future of all this. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I shall mute myself now, but thank you all
We
very
have
much.
had another question come in, Matt, but I'm suggesting that we keep it for the end.
I'm cautious of time, so I think we're going to move on if that's all right. So thank you, Gav. And again, another call to action. If you've got an idea, burning away somewhere just to do a talk, let's get it live, and I'm sure it will be a great event. So thank you, Gav. We're going to move on to the almost our last section for this evening, which again is a bit of a rally cry for our leaders. So Neil, I'm going to hand over to you to take us through almost the last segment.
Thank you, Matt. And it is very much a rally cry. I get the pleasure of going all Captain America on everybody and saying, leaders, assemble, because it really is that time. It's time to start getting back to what we do best, because we do it best. Time to start planning day walks and cycles, and to start spotting those campsites or remembering those places that you've been by in the past that you thought that would make a really good venue for an event. It's very easy to clone previous events. So there's that functionality within the website. So don't forget that's there, you know, to clone something that's been done before. If you can't set something up yourself, you know, it's there as a function. So let's use that. We've got an arsenal of Back with the Bang events. You've heard that mentioned already. I think it's 214 events that are sitting in the system. They're there, ready to be used, to be distributed. A lot of leaders set them up with the intention of doing them themselves or sharing them with other people. You know, if people want to break those larger events down into groups of 6 and repeat them so that we can get more people out and about, then use those events, because that's exactly what they're there for. We're going to look to change the requirements around adding photos to the event pages, because that's the #1 bit of feedback we get from everybody in terms of the difficulty of setting up an event page. And I'll be running a separate session for leaders on that at some point in the next couple of weeks. As well as that, we're going to run some drop-in sessions. So literally once every fortnight, there'll be someone sitting there at the end of a Zoom call where leaders can drop in. They'll be able to get a refresher on how to build an event page. If they've got a bit rusty during lockdown, or there's certain things that they've forgotten that they need to do, there will be someone there sitting there ready to help you, ready to answer questions, and ready to help you get pages set up. And if you want to lead an event and you're not sure what to do, I think, you know, as Gavin was just saying with the Stay In More events, we can find things for you to lead. There really are lots of events already in the system over the years that they've happened. And the regional coordinators have always got lots of events that they can pair you up with. So, you know, don't just sit there kind of thinking there's nothing for you to do. Because if anything that, you know, lockdown has taught us is the fact that, you know, there are lots of things around us that we have probably discovered while out walking that we never even realized were there before. And it's those sorts of nuggets of, you know, insight that we, you know, we really need to sort of tap into. And put yourself forward to be a leader if you're not a leader already. Next slide, please, Mr. Chairman. You know, our volunteers are the lifeblood of the organisation. I always say this, but there's no truer saying. You know, we are a very cyclical organisation. Our events are dependent on leaders. Our leaders are dependent on members, and our members are the things that drive the events. It goes round and round, literally in both directions. We simply can't continue to exist without the time and the patience and the energy that's put into every walk, cycle, hostel, camp, climb, social, everything that we do. And, you know, if you're not a leader yet, if your lockdown has reminded you that actually you like planning a route, or you like doing a bit of discovering with a map, or that you miss cooking for a gaggle of really hungry gays who have been out hiking all day, that you really love helping people put their tent up in gale force winds, or that you love to get out more, but doing it with others is just so much more of a special event for you. And that you've been promising yourself for way too long that you're going to do something about this leader thing, and you've actually always fancied volunteering, and you think, yeah, maybe I can do this. Now's that time, please, you know, make yourself a promise that in 2021, this is going to be the year that you put that application in. Because if you take one thing away from this meeting today, you know, hopefully it's the fact that this organisation needs everything that it can get at the moment, every bit of resource, every bit of support, and every bit of input. And if you fancy volunteering in some way, shape or form to make that happen, it will be very, very valued by every single person who's a member.
Great, thank you, Neil. I think that's all from your slides, I think.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I'm not seeing if we've got any questions.
We have one come in from the wonderful Skip Evans, the coordinator in the Midlands, who has just reminded everyone, and I'm sure Neil and Danny will also want people to know, that if you are interested in becoming a leader, cycle, walking, hostels, talk to your regional coordinator. They can help make it happen.
or just talk to another leader who you know. You know, I mean, every single leader, every single volunteer was once a person who was about to become a leader and a volunteer. They've all been through that experience. They've all had that first hand of what it's like, and they can help, and they will share, and they will teach you. It's one of the great things about leading. It's not just setting up events, it's also about helping others, you know, gain that ability.
Great, thank you. So yeah, I think, Neil, unless there's any more questions, brilliant, and thanks for that. So as I said, leaders, keep an eye on inboxes, our Facebook group, etc., etc. There will be more information coming out over the next couple of weeks about what is going on. And again, for the people who are on the call, if you're thinking, oh, do you know what, I've thought about leading for a little bit. A while ago, I thought I would never ever be able to cook for a group of 30 people, and yeah, a couple of years later, as I'm cooking on hostel events, it is possible, and I can't cook for shit. And I'm, you know, I can lead hostel events now. What an advertising for my future hostels. So let's keep that one in mind. All righty. So thanks, Neil. And I think actually we are now pretty much coming to the end of the presentation.
It's an interesting point you make there, though, Matt. Actually, something that I forgot to put into my slide presentation. If you're the kind of person that thinks that they can lead a hostel event, but they're worried about the cooking, do what I did. Find someone who's a good cook. I like doing the organising of the events. My friend likes doing the cooking. We are a hostel double act. It doesn't always have to be just down to one person. So, you know, think outside the box a little bit, and we'll help you with that.
Great, absolutely. Okay, thank you, Neil. All right, we are almost there, everybody. We're just coming to the last couple of slides then. So just a summary of everything, and thank you everyone for your great questions and comments and suggestions and ideas we've had this evening. There's actually one question that was posed in the leaders box, which is around what has been some of our key learning points and what have essentially we as maybe as a board and what have as me as chair learned over the last couple of years, over this last year. One is we need to be reactive to the situation that we find ourselves in. This time back in March and April last year, we were having board calls what felt like twice a week, trying to plan out and understand what's going on. And I think one of my big learning curves now, between now and the summer, is that we're not going to have enormous planning meetings every week, which is we have a team that knows what to do, and essentially we're always going to keep fluid, keep the ideas coming, and also just making sure that we're reacting, we're picking up things that we're going along. I think my other big learning point is, and again, this isn't necessarily a warning, but don't take ODL for granted in terms of us as a charity and will we be here forever, which is we planned up until this point that the biggest disaster that we'd ever face is that we might have foot and mouth for 6 months. That means that we can't do activities, etc., etc. And we are still midway through a whole year program where we haven't been able to run any events, and we're okay. And that is the absolute core thing, is we're all right. We're still here. We've still got a lot of cash left in the bank, and we've still got a lot ready for the remainder of this year. But let's not always take this for granted. And I think this year has shown the importance of our resilience and what we do to make sure that we keep this organisation going. So I guess my key learning points for the last 12 months. So let's just summarise then on what we've run through this evening, and I guess some of the kind of big takeaway messages for everybody on the call this evening. So hopefully from the end of this month, we will start to launch our micro events program through stage 1 and going into stage 2. Once we are into May, and assuming everything is going well, we're going to go live with the Back with a Bang events at stage 3, and again camping back in stage 3. Our hostel and camping events will be entirely dependent on the government research and the advice and the YHA guidance and all those bits of information. And again, we will be dependent on that to be able to do the remainder of our programme. And as I think we've said so many times throughout this presentation, we will need your help to get this off the ground and to get it happening. Without you, none of this is going to be able to be possible. So this is, if you take one thing away from this evening, which is we need people to start putting themselves forward, to get involved, to put events on, to help out, to come up with ideas. One email to say, oh, Matt, there's a festival down the road and they're able to run it by these 5 things. It might be like, oh my God, that's how we're going to make summer camp happen. No one's thought of this. So it's sometimes those little bits of leadership and initiative might get us through, that could be the idea that makes summer camp happen. So just do keep that in mind. So anything off this evening that we've spoken about, getting micro events live, ideas for camps, thoughts, suggestions, ideas, whatever it might be, get your phone out and take a picture of this slide. Support at Outdoor Lads. Any ideas, any suggestions that anybody might have, send it into that email address. So I'll just leave it up there just for 10 seconds or so for people, just if they want to take a picture or write it down. Any ideas that you might have, get it in. We would love to hear any of it. Okay, one important note to finish on then, and I think this is quite important, which is this 12 months have been rough, for a lot of people in a lot of circumstances, in very difficult surroundings, that we found ourselves in isolation and being alone. And what is at the heart of Outdoor Lads is that we're a wellbeing charity, is that we exist because we want to bring people together to make them feel welcome, loved, that they have a purpose in life anymore. And we recognised it in the last 12 months that has been very, very, very difficult for a lot of people. There is help out there from a number of different sources, whether it's Samaritans, to the BBC app, to Mind Out, which is the LGBT mental health service. There is a lot of help out there. And I don't want anyone to suffer, and I appreciate that Outdoor Lads can't be here for everybody for this year, but use these services. They are available. If you know of somebody that is struggling, reach out, drop them a note, make sure they're okay. We're not out of the woods yet. There's light at the end of the tunnel for this, but for a number of months, still people are going to be alone. And maybe the slight cliche of it will really get worse before it gets better will come into play as people know that they've still got these last couple of months alone. So use these services, direct, help each other out. That's kind of fundamentally what we're about as a charity. Okay, so gents, this is pretty much the end of the presentation. What I'm actually going to do before we open up the floor, just to any questions, and I appreciate we're running over a little bit, is I'm actually just going to jump ahead a slide to a little mini announcement. If you haven't picked it up beforehand, we have launched a podcast by two very, very, very talented members, Rich Laverick and Michael Amat, I hope I pronounced your name, who have put their creative hats on and have put together a podcast. So Danny Ballantyne, I know you wanted to put a few comments on this. So Simon, can we hand the virtual talking stick over to Danny?
He has it.
Thank you. Michael's going to kill you, by the way, because it's Amat.
I'm so sorry. It's even my own name and I can't say it right. So thank you, Danny.
But yes, under very strict instructions from Rich and Michael. If you haven't heard already, the Outdoor Lads podcast is now live. If you go to the Outdoor Lads website, you'll see in the chat, Rich has just posted a link. You can listen to the podcast on Spotify, Apple, Google, YouTube, the lot. To revitalise your love for Outdoor Lads at the minute, click on that link. If you're driving to work, if you come home early of an evening, if you put it on, you can listen to the likes of Rob Mitchell, Adrian Mannion, relive some of their best Outdoor Lads adventures. But moving forward now, what we need is content. We need you guys to click on the link, go on the website. If you want to be part of a podcast, if you want to send in your best moments, we are looking for volunteers. Us as a trustee board, we're pretty boring. Actually, what we want to hear about is you guys, the members, the leaders. It's you guys that make this charity, and it's you guys who want to get heard. And if you want to be famous on Spotify, it's quite a good way to go. So click on the link in the chat, go to the Outdoor Lads website, Outdoor Lads, the podcast. You can fill in the form and you'll find links to all of the podcasts on there. Oh, I can see there's a question as well, or a raised hand.
There is indeed. There's a raised hand. which has now just vanished.
Oh,
Maybe
okay.
that was a mistake, but yeah, click on the link in the chat below, or go to the Outdoor Lads website. It'll start to rekindle that fire, getting us ready for the events that are going to come back. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Danny, and an enormous thank you to Rich and Michael again. Apologies for the terribly pronounced name. I think it's an amazing idea and an amazing initiative, and it's a brilliant podcast. I've listened to all of the episodes whilst walking the dog, and it's great. And for those people who think, oh, you know, I'm not sure what ODL is about, introduce them to it. I think it's a fantastic idea, and enormous thanks for the guys for putting it together. And as Danny said, thinking about what ideas, and if you'd like to be on it, do get in touch with Rich and Michael. I'm sure they'd absolutely love to hear from you. Okay, so just then taking us back to this is kind of really the AOB section. I'm cautious that we are just 10 minutes over, so I don't want to keep people here for too long, but equally it is your meeting, it is a March members meeting. So if there's any questions that we maybe haven't answered, or if anyone would like to ask a question, now is the time. I plead that we keep it brief, because I appreciate that people want the rest of their Monday evening. But does any member or anyone from the audience has got any questions or anything they'd like to ask? If not, put it in the chat function, we can answer it now, or if you're brave enough to put your hand up.
So yes, keeping an eye out for any hands going up, and there are currently no questions. So I'm sure somebody wants to ask something. We've been that effective, you see. That's what it is, Matt. You know, it's been so wonderful that nobody wants to ask us any questions. It's
okay. Well, I will just give it another moment or so if anyone's got any questions, but I have the impression probably not. So. Any member, you've got until my last closing gambit. If you do want to kind of question, this is your final opportunity. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us this evening. I hope you found it useful, and I hope this has given you a bit of a steer to some of the challenges that ODL is facing. I hope we've given you some confidence that we are still trying to steer the ship in the right direction, and recognizing some of the challenges that we've got going forward. I hope we've given you some clarity over what the different lockdown stages are and what it means for the different events. And fundamentally, if you are thinking, oh, do you know what? Yes, it's now time for me to step up and put a micro event live, or think about putting a new application. Now is the time, because as I said, and we've said so many times in this presentation, this will rely on you all to get ODL back off the ground and get us moving. So, gents, I think that probably is it.
We have a question.
Just
the last one from Jeff Buck, asking about guidance on car sharing and using public transport to events. Do you want me to take that one?
I think the long and short answer will be, Simon, will be that we will wait. I'm sure there will be some government guidance published on the safety of being in cars and mixing households. We would like to encourage people to share cars if they can do so safely for lots of reasons. I'm sure there will be some guidance at some point when it's published.
And in terms of the public transport, yes, you can use public transport.
Absolutely. Right then, gents, thank you again so much for your time this evening. It's been an absolute pleasure having you all on the call. I hope you've enjoyed it, found it useful, and again, lots of food for thought between now and the summer. Please keep safe. Please keep looking after each other. Check in, ask each other if yourself and your friends are all okay. It makes an enormous difference, and I hope that we will all at some point get to see each other later on this spring and into the summer. Thank you very much, gentlemen, and enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you all.